Good morning. Good morning and happy Monday. Welcome to another session of Disorder in the Court with live streaming coverage of the Chad Daybell trial, day 8. We will be continuing the cross-examination of Melanie Gibb, which ended on a cliffhanger on Friday. I noticed there is conversation in the chat about Adam Montgomery's sentencing. I have it on the calendar. I'm thinking about creating a calendar, like a court calendar for members to access for the for the trials that I plan to cover and to get input on trials that members want me to cover. Good morning, Hippie and Stacy and Sparkles and Chopper. And anybody else coming in? Looks like they're running a little bit late. Man, I've not been feeling too good this weekend. I've been laying low. I caught something. I'm not sure what it is. I don't think it's this terrible flu that I hear that's going around. I hope not. But I was basically down for the count this weekend. I hear movement in the courtroom.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Thanks for the reminder, Hippie. For everybody to hit that thumbs up. I know, and I hardly ever, I get sick like once a year.
All right, good morning. We're back on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. We've got additional testimony from Officer Hart this morning on direct. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping issues. The court has received the juror affirmations. I wanted to confirm, have all 18 jurors returned today?
Yes, Charlotte.
All right. So we've got all 18 jurors with all their juror affirmations signed since the weekend. Also, had a brief sidebar with counsel as we started regarding Defendant's Exhibit 6, which has been admitted, and upon further consideration, I think will require the removal of some commentary in there. I think the parties have all agreed. So as we get to that exhibit, I think it'll need to be either amended or substituted, and we'll work on that issue. But we'll try to keep that as clear as we can in the record once that exhibit's being referenced, and make sure that the exhibit that is submitted to the jurors or published throughout trial to the jurors conforms with previous rulings on that information in the exhibit. So with those issues in mind, is the state going to be ready to proceed with additional direct?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Will the defense be ready to proceed this morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll note also the prosecutors are here as well as the defendant and the defense counsel. So let's go ahead and have our jurors brought in, please, Mr. Bailiff.
Yes, sir. All right, please.
Okay.
Here's our President count for you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Please be seated.
I see Chad has chosen the blue.
Okay, we are on the record on case CR 22-21-1623. This is Monday morning after the weekend break. The court has confirmed that all jurors have returned and are properly seated and present. I'll also note the court received the juror affirmation from all 18 of the jurors. So thank you again for following the court's continuing admonishment and instruction during the breaks. We're ready to continue with direct examination this morning. I'll note the state is here present. Prosecutors Wood and Blake, Mr. Wixom and Ms. Beatty, as well as Mr. Pryor here with the defendant, Mr. Daybell. Officer Hart was on direct examination as we broke for the weekend, and I believe the state has additional direct. Is that correct, Ms. Blake?
That is correct, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. If you'd go ahead and call your witness, then we'll have him return to the stand.
The state will call Agent Hart.
I misspoke who was on the stand earlier, you guys. I'm so sorry. See, that's what happens when your head gets clouded with something, whatever it is.
All right. Thank you. Agent Hart, you are still under oath for purposes of your testimony. That oath was given last week. In addition, I'll just inquire over the weekend or since you were on the stand, have you reviewed any of this trial that's been is available online and has been live streamed? Have you reviewed any of the testimony of the trial?
No, Your Honor.
All right. With that then, Ms. Blake, you can continue on your direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I do have a modified slide, a courtesy copy for the court and one for Your Honor as well, or one for the court and one for Your Honor. Defense has already been provided one. And Your Honor, this is part of State's Exhibit 183. May I publish that exhibit?
Yes, and just to be clear, the identifier information's been redacted on what's going to be published.
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes, you may publish.
Agent Hart, we were here last Friday and we had been talking about some texts exchanged regarding Charles' death. Do you recall that?
I do.
And do you recall talking about the beneficiary in relation to Charles' death?
Yes, there had been a series of text messages between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell that indicated Lori Vallow had found out that her husband, Charles Vallow, had changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy.
And the images on this slide, is that what we're seeing here?
Well, previously there were text messages and then approximately 2 weeks, 10 days later, Lori Vallow sent 2 MMS messages to Chad Daybell on July 28th of 2019. The one on the left is the original life insurance policy that shows Lori Vallow, his spouse, as the beneficiary to receive 100% of the proceeds of that policy. And this one over here shows the change in beneficiary to Ella K. Woodcock and the date that that was done.
And do you know who Ella K. Woodcock is in relation to Charles Vallow?
It's his sister.
And do you know who she is in relation to JJ Vallow?
She would be JJ's grandmother.
And again, these messages were sent to Chad Daybell.
By Lori Vallow, correct.
And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to pause here and allow the jurors to read.
Sorry, late on the take on this. This is really hard. It's much more blurry now. I can't read it actually. I can just make out you're the best.
And Agent Hart, when we look at these messages, we'd talked before, there were additional messages in the iCloud account. Is that correct?
There are thousands of text messages in the iClouds, yes.
And with these particular messages, were there some preceding messages in relation to these?
Chronologically, yes, there were.
And when we're looking at these messages, do you know who the Mel is that's being referred to?
Yes, that's Melanie Boudreau, Lori Vallow's niece.
And what was it about these particular messages that caught your attention?
What caught my attention was the conflict that existed between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell as it relates to their relationship. At this point, Charles Vallow has been dead for almost a month, and Lori Vallow wants her and Melanie Boudreau to travel to Rexburg, Idaho to spend time with Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell is, of course, still married to Tammy Daybell, and so that
It's sustained.
So you were indicating that Melanie Boudreau and Lori were wanting to go to Rexburg to visit Chad.
correct.
And can you read the date on these messages into the record?
The date of this text string is August 7th of 2019.
And then at the bottom, are there some that carry into the next day?
Correct, August 8th of 2019.
During this time, do you know if Tammy Daybell was still alive?
She was.
So in this context, it appears that Lori's telling Melanie, we just had a big fight. Do you know who that's in reference to?
That's in reference to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell.
And at this time, Charles has been dead for not quite a month.
Correct.
What else about these stood out to you?
There's a conflict between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell regarding.
I think there's inadequate foundation at that point. Mr. Pryor, moving forward on your objections, please use the microphone.
Hey, Tiggy. Oh, Pryor.
Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Agent Hart, again, you've talked about you went through thousands of messages in this iCloud account, or that there were thousands of messages, correct?
Yes.
Were there some messages preceding this indicating what Chad's plans were during this time?
Yes.
And what did those messages indicate?
Chad Daybell had a.
All right, again, into the microphone, please, Mr. Pryor, or maybe your mic's not on today, but.
It's not.
Okay, could we get that checked, please, to make sure the microphone is functioning at defense table?
Hey, Destination.
So if I remember right, this is 6.
Now we can hear him.
This is 30.
Hey, Delene. Hello, everyone
Okay,
else.
apologies. Ms. Blake, would you ask another question? I'll defer ruling on that objection. Go ahead.
Agent Hart, did you review messages that indicated what Chad's plans were during this time frame?
Yes, it's a scheduling conflict. Lori Vallow wanted to visit Chad Daybell.
Judge, I'm going to object. It's unresponsive.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Well, I'll sustain the objection because the answer was what Chad's plan. The question was what were Chad's plans, and the answer was what Lori Vallow wanted. I think that's outside the scope of the question and the foundation that's been laid. So it's non-responsive.
You determined that Chad Daybell had different plans during this time?
Judge, objection. That's leading.
Your Honor, he's already answered that.
Overruled.
Yes, he had a family vacation planned.
So in reference to the big fight, based on your investigation, were you able to determine what this text thread was about?
Yes.
And what did you determine the fight to be about?
Lori Vallow's trip which conflicted with Chad Daybell's family vacation.
And when we look at those last 3 messages, did anything about those catch your attention?
From the content of the iCloud, this was the first big fight they had had. And it appeared that they were at odds with one another. And Chad Daybell's comments was that his heart was crushed and he would never stop loving her.
And if we go to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
Damn. I am supposed to warn you that you are, oh man, something. The angels were angry that you are ignoring me. I told him to go back, but he says he can't be allowed to. They need to clear the focus on this Elmo because it's impossible to read this. But okay, let's see. But they say you, I wish they would let him read this. I'm going to look and see if another feed has a clearer. Hey, Patricia. I'm going to see if another feed has a clearer picture of those because.
And Agent Hart, can you indicate the date of these text messages?
Yes, it's towards the end of the day on August 8th of 2019.
Is this a continuation from the conversation we saw on the previous slide?
Correct.
In looking at this, was there something that stood out to you?
Yes.
And what was that?
If you look at the date and the time, you can see that Lori Vallow has ceased to communicate with Chad Daybell for approximately a day. And this lengthy text, line 1300, is a very clear example of how Chad Daybell used his supposed visionary powers to manipulate Lori Vallow.
Judge, I'm going to object. Calls for special.
All right, let me back up. In that first message as well from Chad to Lori, can you read the second sentence of that?
Saddest day of my life.
And again, you indicated Lori had quit communicating with him after the previous message that we saw.
That's correct. So there had been no communication from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell on August 8th of 2019.
And after Chad sends that lengthy text, it appears Lori resumes communication. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you read into the record what she said?
I love you.
And then Chad responds just,
thank you, my love. I will get things restored.
so in that lengthy one, he indicated that he may not be able to protect her anymore.
Correct. Grandpa Keith is Lori's deceased grandfather. So Chad Daybell is indicating to Lori Vallow that he is unable to protect her and that the angels are angry that she is ignoring him. And so he is trying to get her to respond due to those indication of what's happening spiritually.
And then once she does respond, Chad will get things restored.
That's what he indicates, yes.
Then if we move to the next slide, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
It says surprises are waiting. I switched to another feed that has a clearer view. Surprises are waiting.
And will you indicate the date this message was sent?
This is August 10th of 2019.
And what about this particular message stood out to you?
Well, I think this is an example of how Lori Vallow manipulates Chad Daybell.
And this image was sent along with the surprises or waiting text. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, on August 10th, is Tammy Daybell still alive?
Yes.
Moving to the next slide, and again, I'll pause to allow the jurors to read.
Chad says, very good description of what just happened. Wish you were really here to experience this with me. And she says, thank you for being mine. Wish I could wake up and kiss your sweet, tender lips for real. You are my everything. Oh, sorry, that was me. Nobody in the text messages said
And if
that.
you could read into the record the date these messages were sent.
These are August 10th of 2019.
So these would have been sent after that image that we saw in the previous slide.
Correct.
What, if anything, about these caught your attention?
There had been several messages preceding these two messages indicating their ability to connect spiritually, to enter into portals, to be together outside the physical realm. What stood out to me about these two messages is that both Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell understand that's not real and it's not true. Lori Vallow says, I wish you were really here to experience this with me. And again, saying, I wish I could wake up and kiss your sweet, tender lips for real. So to me, that indicated an understanding between being together truly in the physical realm in which we live versus this alleged ability to portal and be with one another spiritually.
And if we go to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
Chad says, I will join you, partly why I'm so sad my Boise trip has turned into a trip with extended family. Not happy about it. Lori says, how much more of this can you take? He says, they want to go to Craters of the Moon National Park. I can't take much more. So trapped. And she says, are we supposed to wait forever? Oh my God.
Can you indicate the date these messages were sent into the record?
Yes, this is August 11th of 2019.
I'm not sure when his
And
makeover.
what about these particular messages caught your attention?
These four messages are the beginning of a text string that occupies this slide and the next 5 slides. And it's a lengthy back and forth between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow regarding a vacation that Chad Daybell is going on with his wife, Tammy Daybell, and other relatives.
And in relation to that trip, can you read the last sentence of that first text?
Partly why I am so sad is my Boise trip has turned into a trip with extended family. Not happy about it.
And then if we move down to that third message, was there something about that that caught your attention?
Well, these are Chad Daybell's own words. He says, I can't take much more, so trapped. So it's an indication of how he's feeling as it relates to his current situation as it existed on August 11th of 2019.
We move to the next slide, and I'll pause to allow the jurors to read.
Chad says, no, but the next 2 days will be torture. Thankfully, I will be alone most of Wednesday and beyond. Lori says, is that what he wants, for me to sit around waiting for you endlessly and you miserably wasting time? It just doesn't feel right. And he says, I'm just so frustrated. I'm sorry, honey. And she says, you can't just keep tearing my heart out. I really can't take it anymore. I'm sorry. Wow. I know it would break my heart if I found out that one of my family members, while we were having a fun family, get together, were texting their mistress.
And Agent Hart, you indicated this is
wanna
a
be here.
continuation from the previous slide. Is that correct?
Yes.
What about these messages caught your attention?
First of all, the date caught my attention. This is 1 month to the day after Charles Vallow had been killed, and approximately 10 months into the relationship between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Subsequent to Charles Vallow's death, the pressure being put by Lori Vallow on Chad Daybell for them to be together increased significantly. And so you see in these messages that Lori Vallow is asking, is that what he wants, for me to sit around waiting for you endlessly and you miserably wasting time? It doesn't feel right. And so these messages are a good indication of their thoughts as it relates to their ability to be together in the current circumstances that they find on that date.
And in that first message, Chad refers to it as torture.
Referring to the 2 days he's going to spend with his family as torture, yes.
And you indicated Charles Vallow's been dead for about a month, correct?
Exactly 1 month.
But Tammy's still alive.
Yes, she is.
He says trapped too.
And moving to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
Lori says, if you really loved me, you wouldn't want that either. Oh my God. And he says, she says again, you should give all of your love to and your attention to your wife and family. I'm just a distraction. Go have fun with your family. I really do want you to. I just can't be in the way anymore. If things change, then we can talk. But we have nothing until things change anyway. And then Chad says, oh, honey, that is so crushing. I feel so destroyed inside. You know, my love for you is deep and real. I want change. I'm constantly begging for change. I want you. Nothing else matters. But I am hindering your life, and you deserve better.
And Agent Hart, you indicated this is also a continuation from the previous two slides. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
When you look at these particular messages, what stood out to you?
Again, it's a clear communication between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell regarding the status of their relationship and Lori Vallow's desire to be together overtly with Chad Daybell.
And when we look at the last message, the response from Chad to Lori, can you read that into the record?
Yes. Oh, honey, that is so crushing. I feel so destroyed inside. You know, my love for you is deep and real. I want change. I'm constantly begging for change. I want you. Nothing else matters. But I am hindering your life and you deserve better. I love you so intensely.
And at this point in time, again, Charles died 1 month ago, correct?
Yes,
But Tammy's still alive.
yes.
And moving to the next slide, again, I'll pause to allow the jurors to read.
Chad says, but I will leave you alone, as excruciating as that will be, until I hear from you. And Lori says, you can't say to me nothing else matters because everything is before me. If that's what the Lord wants, then I just need to do something else so I can pull myself out of this deep despair. It's not like me to be this way. It's been too much for way too long. The pain is unbearable. So pressure, 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 pressure. Exactly, Patricia. This makes me freaking sick, man.
Agent Hart, on that previous slide, we'd seen that Chad was begging for change so he could be with Lori. Is that correct?
Yes.
What would need to change so he and Lori could be together?
Judge, objection calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Agent Hart, when we look at this slide, is it a continuation from the last several slides?
Yes,
And it's still on August 11th of 2019.
that's correct.
What about these messages stood out to you?
This demonstrates Lori Vallow's impatience for this plan that I've testified to previously about the life they want to live, where they want to live it, and their plans to be together and conduct missions together. And so Lori wants that to happen. And that can't happen while Tammy Daybell is still married to Chad Daybell.
And again, to remind the jurors, in these messages, did you ever see any indication that Chad was intending to divorce Tammy?
Never.
Did you ever see any indication that Chad was intending to separate from Tammy?
No.
If we go to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read it.
Chad says, you are right. Put me aside until things change. Yes, the pain is unbearable. And she says, are you going to threaten me that I am unprotected for doing so? And he says, absolutely not. I'm so upset at the circumstances that I'm demanding they protect you more than ever. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I shouldn't use Jesus' name in vain in this circumstance. How awful. What a mind F.
And again, Agent Hart, this is a continuation from the previous slides. Is that correct?
It is.
What about these particular messages stood out to you?
Previously, on August 8th of 2019, when this conflict about Chad Daybell's family vacation came up, we saw the text message about Grandpa Keith and that the angels were angry that Lori Vallow was ignoring Chad Daybell. The middle line of this text is a reference to that exchange that occurred 3 days previously, where Lori Vallow is now asking Chad Daybell, are you going to threaten me that I'm unprotected for putting Chad Daybell aside? And his response is absolutely not. I'm so upset at the circumstances. I'm demanding they protect you more than ever. So this was a tie back to the August 8th conversation with Chad Daybell.
And again, an indication that Chad Daybell can provide some form of protection.
Correct.
And moving to the next slide, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
Lori says, I'm so alone without you. It's devastating. And she says, and he says, I feel so alone too. We are surrounded by celestial relatives that are simply obstacles. I'm sick of it. And she says, me too. What is it that you really want? And he says, I want to be with you. That is my greatest hope and dream. I would happily join you tomorrow if it felt like heaven would not strike us down. See? Heaven will strike him down for divorce.
And Agent Hart, is this also a continuation from the previous slides?
Correct. This is the final slide for this text string.
Hey, Rando.
And with this one, if we break it down a little bit, looking specifically at that second text from Chad to Lori, are there certain things in that text that stood out to you?
Absolutely.
What were those?
The first is, it's mainly the second sentence. We are surrounded by telestial relatives that are simply obstacles.
Do you know what the reference telestial relatives would be in relation to? Or actually, let me back up. Through your investigation, did you learn or determine what telestial relatives would be referencing?
Yes.
What did you learn that to be?
The word telestial derives from the LDS faith. It is the lowest level or degree of glory or heaven. And then there are levels above that. So it's a reference to the lowest level of heaven as it's perceived.
And the specific word next to that is relatives.
Yes.
And these telestial relatives are being described as simply obstacles.
Correct.
And then what did Chad say regarding that? What's that next sentence, if you could read it into the record?
I'm so sick of it! Exclamation point.
And there's a response from Lori, but then looking down to the last message from Chad back to Lori, anything about that one that stood out to you?
There's a couple of things that stood out in that last sentence. Yes.
And could we go through those one by one?
Yes.
What is the first one?
Chad Daybell states very clearly what his greatest desire is. I want to be with you. That is my greatest hope and dream.
And again, during this time, Tammy Daybell's still alive?
She is.
What else about this message stood out to you?
Hey, Blue.
The last sentence is telling in my mind. I would happily join you tomorrow if it felt like heaven would not strike us down.
Your Honor, I have no additional questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake.
Okay, here comes.
Counsel, in reference to cross-examination and potential exhibit, I wanted to update counsel on that outside the presence of the jurors. So let's take a brief sidebar at this moment.
Sidebar. And we're going to be hearing from Mr. Pryor again.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, okay, right? Okay, right? Okay, right? Right? Okay, okay, okay.
Should we start a right okay counter? Good morning, Teacup. So I had seen a lot of those messages, and I'm pretty all of those messages. Hello, Truth Junkie. All of those messages have been in Discovery, so I'm pretty sure that his kids are aware, at least, of those messages. I also feel like his kids practice some form of avoidance about all of this information. Like kind of like I'm putting my hands over my ears, right? Nah, 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 kind of like that. You know how little kids, they just put their hands over their ears and go, nah, 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 I don't hear you. That's what I feel happens in Chad Daybell's family, because they don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. Hey, Johnny. Yeah, I haven't been feeling good this weekend. Sorry you're not feeling well or don't have the energy to participate. But anyway, I feel like his kids have actively avoided seeing the truth. You know, Blue, I didn't watch the Letitia Stout trial. So I don't know who Aunt Brenda is, but every family has them. Like I was talking about this last week. Whatchamacallit? What's his name? Oh gosh. Morphew, Barry Morphew. His kids, his girls have that, you know, like I don't see it, I don't hear it. Oh, wait. Mom and dad had a terrible relationship. Mom was trying to leave dad, mom was having an affair, and now I'm talking about Morphews right now. You know, it's it is something, it is a something in families that has stood the test of time, where people look the other way, they just don't want to see certain things. Who oh, Aunt Brenda sends Letitia money. Okay, gotcha. Does Aunt Brenda believe Letitia? Is she like, does she like fully support her innocence, or is she just being like a underdog supporter? You know what I mean? The person who's there for the evil sheep of the family. I almost said dark sheep, but Letitia is more than just a dark sheep. Yep, don't ruin it. Yeah, don't ruin it with the truth, right, Teacup? I mean, anyone who's had a family with abuse, there's always family members that look away and act like it didn't happen. And then when you tell them, they don't want to know. They don't want you to tell them. They don't want to face the truth. They don't want to believe that thing. Yeah, they don't want to believe that thing you're telling them. But this is so big, you know, putting it back into the Daybell context. This is so big. I mean, there wasn't just, you know, tiny little familial abuses. There was mass abuse on a mass scale. They were planning mass abuse on a mass scale. Okay, so Letitia calls her Aunt Brenda. Oh, man. I think that anyone who's been involved in any sort of relationship where there's, hello Music City Mom, where there's abuse, knows that there are people who will actively hide that kind of thing. Oh, well, oh, you've been a member for 2 months. Thank you, Music City Mom. Mm-hmm. And that is the excuse that's used a lot, Blue. I mean, hey, God says listen to your elders, or you know, your parents, or whatever. And or they, even if, you know, I feel like when you're being raised in a super duper religious family, even if it's not in the Bible and there's abuse in the family, the Bible will be used to justify it, just like what's happening in this situation with Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. They constructed such a big major thing. He had this entire group sort of dynamic built around him where people think that he's a visionary prophet and he gets to tell them who lives and who dies. I mean, that's major.
All right, we're back on the record after a sidebar with counsel. It's a little earlier than we would normally do this, but what we're going to do is take our mid-morning break at this time in order to get some exhibits properly before the jury, before cross-examination, which will take a few moments. So we'll use that time to allow the jurors to take a break. I'll go on the record with counsel before we bring the jurors back in at the end of the break to make any other additional evidentiary rulings that would occur outside the presence of the jurors. And then once we've concluded that, we should have the morning set up for continued cross-examination and evidence until we get to lunch. So with that in mind, let's take our mid-morning break at this time.
All right, please.
Okay, well, they're taking their break.
All right, counsel, just let me know when you want to conclude the break when we have these exhibits ready.
All right, so
Folks, go ahead and head out now. You grab all of your
let's move on over to seeing what's going on with Karen Reed. If there are any specific updates.
This morning in the murder trial of Karen Reed. Reed is accused of hitting and killing her police officer boyfriend and then leaving him to die in a blizzard. WBZ's Penny Kmet is live in Dedham with the very latest on this case. Penny?
Well, Kate, it's been a very eventful week, both in and outside of the courthouse here. Things are going to resume today. Jury selection is still underway, but attorneys are hoping that they can finalize the jury panel today. As of now, 12 jurors have been selected, but we're still awaiting those 4 alternates to be picked. Today, the judge will also be considering a motion from the defense team. They are requesting that the jury box actually be moved. That way the full panel can see witnesses' faces while they testify. Today, we're also hoping to hear about a decision about what evidence can be used in court. That includes DNA from a piece of hair that was found on Karen Reed's bumper. Reed herself has been in the courtroom every single day for jury selection so far. This is something that legal experts say will be good for her case. In a way, it kind of humanizes her and shows that she is present. In Dedham, I'm Penny Kmet, WBZ News.
And we will be streaming the Karen Reed murder trial live once opening statements begin. You can watch it on CBS News Boston and Pluto TV. Right now, you can see a timeline of this case and all of our reporting on WBZ.com. Jury selection continues this morning.
So I watched Emily D. Baker's breakdown of the Karen Reed case, and I thought it was so good because it broke it down factually and didn't, she acknowledged that there is a lot of drama and public attention around the case, but really broke it down to what it's going to come down to in the actual, in the trial, in the courtroom. Hello, Christina J. So it's a really, it's like only a half an hour, and I feel like it's the best way to get a update on the actual case without all the noise surrounding it, without someone, from a legal perspective, and without a super biased view from one side or another, So yeah, I always appreciate her breakdowns. I'm going to switch over to, actually, no, not that, not at this moment. Let me see if there's something else here more more informative. Let's see what this says.
Antoinette and Doug, good morning. Several more jurors need to be seated before opening statements can begin. 12 jurors have already been impaneled in this case. 4 more are needed. They will be alternates in this case. Heard about the case and if they formed an opinion about the case. Additionally, jurors are being questioned individually out of earshot of the public. Now, with regard to the 4 more who are needed, eventually possibly alternates, former Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley says no jurors actually know that they're an alternate until the case is handed to them.
In Massachusetts, all the jurors sit until the deliberations begin, unlike in New York, where people are picked as jurors and alternate jurors. And part of that is, I think, to make sure everybody pays as much attention as they should.
A buffer zone.
Good morning, Jen Lou. Nice to see you. So, now I just took a little trip on over to Twitter. Wait, let me watch what they are going to say about the buffer zone.
Will remain around the courthouse as the case picks up again today. A justice of the Supreme Judicial Court upheld the decision to have a buffer zone. But
you know, I just find it interesting that every single morning Karen Reed shows up looking like she just got 2 hours of hair and makeup from, you know, like a style team. I mean, I don't know. I just this whole trial is so off-putting to me. So over on Twitter they have Nate has video of Colby Ryan showing up. Looks good. So I wonder if this means that he is going to be testifying today. Looking to see if there's any in updates on that end. It's the Lou. Yes, never fear, Jen Lou is here. She is a harlot. I agree, she's attractive, but it's like she also has kind of her resting bitch face is something to behold. Yeah, we don't know. The witness list is sealed. We haven't been able to see. Oh, this is interesting. Look at this. This is a really good let's see how it looks on the screen. This is a really good chart here. I don't know who developed this. Wait. That's a really good chart. I've never seen this before. Oops, sorry. So these are all the family members in the case. All the family members. Yep. So in case you are, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screenshot of this so that I can flash it up while we're watching some portions of the trial. Yes, Rando, he did get arrested, but those charges were dropped. He and his wife got into a situation. Seemed very sad. So Jen, what are you thinking of this trial so far? Any thoughts? Do you feel like coming up and chatting during this break? If so, I'll share the link. I just think this is a good chart. I just took a screenshot of it because I've never seen one this well put together. Those another thing that what I had been trying to do last week, I was in the middle of telling basically the story. Okay, cool. Let me share the link. I was telling the basic story of how okay, I'm sharing the StreamYard link. This is for Jen Lu only. I was telling the whole Charles Vallow story and how when Lori and Tylee and Melanie Gibb went into the police station, and yeah, Twitter is definitely a minefield. When they went into the police station to talk to the police, because Lori was claiming that Charles stole her stuff, but really she stole his stuff first. And I was showing how she manipulated them and brought people, she brought her flying monkeys with her to manipulate the cops and everything. It's a really sad state of affairs, how that was able to all go down. And I've done videos about it. And, when you think about that and you think about how, oh gosh, we're going to start getting drilling at the house next door. Shoot. When you think about that, and then you think about that in the context of all the stuff that Lori and Alex did to get Alex out of her life, to get Charles out of her life. And here is Jen Lu. I don't have any reason to believe that's anybody but you. Hello.
Hey, babe. I'm so sorry that I have to come in on my phone. I'm rendering a video right now, and you can't be doing anything extras. And I don't have like the wireless headset because I just got an iPhone and I wasn't prepared. But I did want to come up and just chat with you for just a quick minute while we're on a break.
Oh, you're fine. So it's good to talk to you. We haven't talked in a little while. How are you generally?
I'm generally doing very well. How are you?
Generally okay, except it had caught something that I'm fighting off from the weekend, but I'll be okay. Oh, it's whatever. I get sick like once a year, and I guess this is it. This was my once a year. So
Well,
anyway.
at least it's going to be one and done then.
Yeah, one and done. So what are your thoughts? How closely have you been watching the trial? I think I noticed that you said you were going to be streaming parts of it, but I haven't closely seen how much you've been streaming. So tell me what you think.
Well, I changed my mind. I was going to not stream it and then just do like the recaps. But to be frank, it's very difficult for me to be paying attention with some of this testimony, and it was easier to stream. So I started streaming every morning session last week. And so far, I think that I don't think that anything that Pryor has done in the way of cross-examining any of these witnesses, including Melanie Gibb, has done anything to really lessen Chad's culpability when it comes to the murders of JJ and Tylee. However, Melanie, Mel G.
Yes, our favorite Mel.
implicated herself quite a bit more this go round than
Mm-hmm.
she did in Lori's trial. And I've been really like thinking about that and wondering what the implications are for her and wondering why Idaho has treated her the way that they have. And a lot of people have asked. And
Yeah.
I'm almost wondering if Idaho feels like the majority of the shenanigans that she contributed to, the planning, took place while she was in Arizona. So perhaps
Right.
they feel that Arizona would be the place to charge her. You know, you can be charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Those don't have
Statute. Yeah.
statute of limitations. So I know everybody is frustrated and kind of waiting, but she made some really interesting admissions. For example, one of them that she made that I found particularly interesting is the lie about cancer, that she suggested Lori tell Kay Woodcock that she not just was sick, that she had cancer, and that's why she needed her to take JJ. Of course, that never happened. You know, we know that, but
Yeah.
that means that Melanie was a lot more a part of the day to day than she would like to admit. So that was an important admission.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about that. So this, oh, I do remember this now. So it was Lori had tried to say that she had cancer, so she needed to have Kay take care of JJ, right?
Right. So, okay. What had happened was Melanie and Lori were discussing, this is right after both JJ and Tylee had been labeled dark, allegedly by Chad. I don't think that's accurate. Now, what I do think is, I think Melanie's telling the truth in the fact that I do think that when Lori tells Melanie that Chad said they were dark, or whenever Lori passes messages to Melanie from Chad about things that he's learned and shared with her, that part of the conversation, I think Melanie is telling the truth. However, I think that it's for Lori's part a lie by omission, because I think that Lori was very involved in the determining of who was light and who was dark.
Absolutely.
Mainly because the people that were determined to be light and or dark, particularly in her situation, the people that were all dark were people that Lori had day-to-day interactions with, and Chad did not.
Right.
So
exactly. And also, yeah, I mean, there were all kinds of her family members on the chart, and very few of his, and he didn't meet most of these people.
Correct.
And he was just going to do whatever she wanted him to do. So just by mere suggestion, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that they fed off of each other. I don't think that either one of them was more culpable or less culpable than the other. I think they were cahooters, 50-50 on the whole deal. Period.
Do you think they've shown enough of his culpability? That's the question.
I think not quite yet.
Right. I think that's where I'm standing too, is they've shown some, and they've started to really get to it with the messages. I don't know if you saw the messages they just went through, which have been in discovery, but some of them, your memory gets refreshed. You see how they were both pressuring each other. Hey, Queen, she's watching us on TV, our icons on TV. You get to see our icons. We have great icons on TV. Anyway, so they were both pressuring each other. He's pressuring her like, if you're not with me, you're not protected, basically. Like it's it's like a freaking protection racket he's running.
Right. It's ridiculous.
I know. And then and she's like, basically the unspoken words are, hey, my husband's dead. Why do I have to wait for so long for you?
Correct.
You know?
Correct. And what's interesting is this is the way I think it's going to shake out. I think with the verdicts, I think that Chad is going to definitely be found guilty of committing conspiracy to murder with JJ and Tylee, because of the hair. There is a blonde hair that was found wrapped up in some duct tape that was used on JJ, and that came back to Lori. So I think he's going to be convicted that way with conspiracy. Tammy, on the other hand, Tammy is the one that I think he is going to be convicted of actually committing murder, and that's where he's going to get the death penalty.
Interesting.
That's what I think.
Yeah, that's the one big mystery is what actually happened to Tammy, right? Like, so many different stories. He was, by his account, the only person there, right? In that mix of, Chad, Lori, Alex, right? How did she and they've deemed it what, poisoning or they can't say it's strangulation. They don't know, right?
I think that they said asphyxiation. No, that was JJ. Oh boy. I cannot remember what they assigned as her cause of death. But I will say this, his account of what happened and how he discovered her is what is the most suspicious, and what I can't believe is this didn't happen sooner, because what he said is he woke up to her to the covers shifting off of him and her falling to the floor, but he also said that she was cold to the touch. And I mean, once you pass away, obviously there's factors that go into like how long will it take for your body to get cold or whatever, but I feel like if it was cold, period, then she was like obviously no longer living. And how does a dead body roll off of a bed?
I know. I know.
And I'm not trying to be insensitive. I just don't understand it. So that was like red flag number one that literally nobody paid attention to. And it's right there in the 911 call.
Right.
And
so they did actually, I looked it up because because I thought they did determine that too. And they did, Jen, you were right. Authorities later grew suspicious and had the body exhumed for an autopsy, which determined Tammy Daybell died of asphyxiation.
Okay. So there's ways that they can determine that, like after, from exhumation, they're going to look at obviously the initial autopsy report, and what likely they found was petechial hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
And so that's probably how they determined it. And I will say this, according to what's supposed to be coming from the defense, because make no mistake, Chad Daybell his lawyer will be presenting a defense. This is a capital murder case. He's going to present defense. And so for the children, his defense has been, my name is Paul, and that's between y'all. It was Lori and Alex. My name is Bennett, and I show the fuck one in it. That's his defense. For Tammy, his defense is very simple. It was never murder. She did die of natural causes. She was a very, very sick woman who was very, very private about being sick. She told nobody. I'm the only person on the entire planet that she told. And she hated doctors.
Right.
So, that's his defense.
And
so
supposedly,
Chad.
And supposedly 4 of his children are going to get up and say that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which I just don't think that's going to go very far with the jury. I do not think the jury is going to buy it. I will say that for his part, Pryor has done a somewhat decent job of separating Chad from Lori in some
Yeah.
situations. However, even with Chad trying to be like, man, I don't know how those bodies got there on my property. That police video from inside the vehicle is very, very telling. And it's telling because not only is Chad not shocked. Listen, I get that Chad is not in a motor. Okay. He's very flat. That's just his personality. Okay. But you can emote without actually saying things.
Yeah.
And one of the ways people convey shock is like to shake their head.
Yeah.
Because they're just confused about the whole thing. That didn't happen.
Right.
He has resigned himself that he's not coming back. So he turns over all of the things to his daughter. He's
Yep.
making future financial arrangements. Now,
In
why
the
do
car,
you?
in the body cam in the car. Yeah.
Yes. Now, why are you needing to make you're not going? You're refinancing your home for what, sir?
Yeah.
For to finance your defense, because it ain't to finance Lori's, it's for yours, which
Mhm.
means that you have some level of consciousness of guilt. And I don't believe for a second the way that JJ was buried, and I don't like using that word, but that's the only word I know, because Tylee was treated, her body was treated very differently,
Yeah.
very disrespectfully.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that Alex did that. If you, like, Nate does a really good job. He breaks down the timeline from the pings of Alex's phone. And the time that he was there the most is around the time of where they suspect Tylee was buried. But the other times were like, 17 minutes. 17 minutes is not long enough to do what was done with the planks. And when you read, like, I listened to Reporting Live from my couch. He's great. He read Chad's book about being a cemetery sexton. And Chad is explaining about, like, the vault and everything that goes in the ground, which I had no idea how all of that worked, but he explains all of it. So that's more how JJ was buried is more indicative of somebody with experience.
Yeah. I agree. I totally agree. And that whole footage of him in the car, talking to his daughter after, when he's getting arrested, I felt like that was somebody who's like, well, I've been caught. That's it. I'm done. I'm done for, time for my last will and testament,
Right.
And he was, like you said, he was so resigned and almost like, how some people, they're just waiting to get caught, and it's kind of like a relief to them. And that was his whole vibe,
Yes.
like he was like sitting there looking in the specific direction of where they were digging, waiting to get caught, knowing what they were going to find.
Yes. See, and this is what I think. I think that as soon as they showed up that day to serve that search warrant, he knew the gig was up, right?
Yeah.
And I think that he was taking off to John Pryor's office in an effort. He wasn't going to abscond. They were going to arrest him. But I think he wanted to do it on his terms.
Right.
He wanted to
arrange
turn
a
himself
surrender.
in. Correct. And get a little bit more things settled and moved around before he did it. And the police were like, no, go get him and bring him back. I don't give a rat's fat kneecap where he's going. Bring him back now. And they did.
Right. And it kind of, by the way, what was happening and by the way he took off, it looked like he was fleeing a bit. So they were within their rights to stop him and arrest him and stuff, I feel.
Absolutely. And they were right to do it, because who knows what was in that vehicle? Like, they didn't know in that moment what was in that vehicle, and they needed to get him and the vehicle and process both for any evidence. And I think that a lot of people have some really, really, they're very harsh critics of Chad's children.
Yeah.
And I'm reserving criticism for the time being. And here is why. because I'm going to need, and this is going to be so much different than Lori's trial. One thing that was kind of interesting about Lori's trial was the lack of video. So when there isn't anything to look at, you have to pay attention to what's said. But it takes away the element of seeing the person on the stand, which I think is important. And because I haven't, them giving an interview is very different. You know how that goes, Lynn. It's a lot is filmed, but not everything is used. It's not ever put together in the order in which it was filmed. They mix it around. I've done it myself.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I was interviewed for 4 hours for the social dilemma, and they used like 2 seconds.
Right.
And it's not because I was a bad interview.
No, it's just they have to decide.
It's just the way it is.
Put in. They're limited on the amount of time. Like when I did the Gypsy documentary, the second part, if I would have put in everything that I wanted to, part 2 would have been 4 hours long.
Yeah.
You know, if I put in everything, I had to put in the main parts and tell people, here's where to go for the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? There's just a little bit that but that's what you do. And so I'm very interested in seeing and hearing for myself what it is that they're asked, their answers, their nonverbal cues, their body language, and then how they do on cross. It's intimidating testifying, period, right? But it's slightly less intimidating when the person doing the question is their witness. They ask questions in a different way. They usually get like some warm up questions to get you comfortable.
Right.
Yeah. Are they back?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I'm going to get down, babe, and listen from the chat.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And you're always welcome back here. You know that.
Oh, thank you. And I've got to email you or message you. I have you in Messenger. Don't let me forget. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Exhibits, the issue being that one of the exhibits needed a redaction and other exhibits had some editorial type commentary on them that the court ruled would not be permitted as part of the exhibits. So those were also altered. And so let's just start with the state's exhibit 183. That was on Friday, and it was noted when we stopped for the day that there was some personal identifier information that needed to be redacted. That was redacted, and the information was not published to the jury. But in terms of marking or tracking the redacted exhibit, what does the state suggest in terms of a new replacement exhibit, or just noting on the record a redaction on the admitted exhibit?
Thank you, Your Honor. The state would request that we just note that the redaction was made. The state actually never ended up submitting the original 183 because that was caught prior to us finishing with that PowerPoint presentation. So I talked to Madam Clerk and let her know that we were going to go ahead and get it modified. So the exhibit that's actually been entered into the record is the 183 with the redaction. So I think if we could just make a clear record that it's been admitted with the redaction versus the 183 that was previously admitted that wouldn't have had the redaction, if that makes sense, that may be the easiest way to do it. And the jump drive submitted to the court does have that correction.
Okay. From the defense, any objection to handling the exhibit that way?
No, Judge, and the state provided me all of the redactions, so that's acceptable.
Okay, so I'll put that on the record then. Exhibit 183 now admitted, and what was published and what will be provided to the jurors has the redacted personal identifier information from those screenshots on insurance applications or forms. So that will resolve 183. On Exhibit 6, that was previously admitted, and the commentary, which was not part of the content of the exhibit other than labeling of certain parts of the exhibit, has been removed from those exhibits. I guess I'm looking for how the parties wish to handle that exhibit 6, and it's also going to be exhibit 7 also, defense exhibit 6 and 7. Do we want to strike from the record those already admitted exhibits and admit substitute exhibits? Mr. Pryor, what's your suggestion on that?
Judge, I've prepared substitute exhibits, so I would move to strike those 3 and judge it 6, 7, and 32, which are all by stipulation. I've prepared substitute exhibits. I've had given the state the opportunity to review those in their entirety. So I have 6, 7, and 32. So I would move to strike 6 and 7. I'll substitute 6 and 7 in with the additional one, and then move for 32 as well.
I think 32, we're looking at our records. I don't know that that one was yet admitted.
I don't think so, Judge. I may have referenced it, but I don't think I admitted it at this point.
Okay, well, if 32 is not yet admitted, then we don't have an issue there. What will be admitted will have the proper labeling. On 6 and 7, I guess my suggestion is going to be we would strike them and maybe relabel the new submitted ones, since exhibits were already admitted, and call them 6A and 6B. Is there any objection to us giving them a new designated name, or do you think it's more clear to just note the changes on the exhibits after admission?
Your Honor, from the state's perspective, I believe that both 6 and 7 have multiple subparts that are labeled within the discs as 6A, 6B, and subsequent, and I think 7's the same. So because of that, I'm not sure if labeling them 6A and 7A would, I think it may create some confusion for the record. So I don't know if we could simply strike the other ones and just resubmit them as 6 and 7, but
Okay.
we'll leave it to the court's discretion.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So that makes more sense to me also then. So just to be clear on the record, 6 and 7 were previously admitted. They were not yet published to the jurors. They were altered in that the descriptive language within those exhibits has been removed. So the contents are the same. The descriptions are not there any longer. So 6 and 7, as originally submitted, are removed from the record, and these 6 and 7 exhibits will come in now with the proper identifiers and just simply replace what was admitted. So we'll watch for that as things move along, counsel. I think there's a few other exhibits that are going to require the same treatment that have maybe not yet been admitted, and my staff attorney will assist in identifying those along the way if counsel hasn't. So I think with that, then we're ready to proceed with those evidentiary issues resolved. Anything further before we move on to cross from the state?
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
Judge, just that if I could have the original 6 and 7 that were struck and have them returned to me, I would appreciate it, Judge.
Okay, if we do have those, we'll get those out of our court records back to defense counsel, and then we will make a diligent effort before deliberations that whatever of these digital files go in for deliberations are only the correct exhibits that were admitted during trial. So with that, we're ready to bring the jurors back in. Let's have them return, and we'll commence with defense cross of the witness.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, right? Okay, right? Okay, right? Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right, ladies.
Right.
Stand up.
So we saw Colby going in. Hey, Tess Mac. Yeah, that is right. They did say that. So we saw Colby walking into the court. I don't quite see.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated.
I wonder if that means he's testifying today.
All right, we've returned from our mid-morning break. We've sorted out the evidentiary issues we had on the record outside the jury's presence. Jury's returned at this time. Agent Hart remains on the stand, still under oath for testimony. The state concluded direct, so at this time, Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to conduct cross-examination, you can do so.
And permission to approach the podium, Judge.
Yes.
Thank you.
Stacy, I think Chad and Alex did it together. That's my feeling. Yeah, I think the same thing, Tess Mac. I just.
Good morning, Agent Hart.
Morning.
Now, would you prefer I refer to you as agent? You're retired FBI agent, is that right?
I am retired. That's correct.
He is.
Is it your preference to be called chief deputy, or would you prefer agent?
Agent's a little less of a mouthful, so that's fine.
And then I'll take your suggestion and refer to you as agent, if that's okay. As part of your investigation, you went over thousands of messages. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Tens of thousands of messages?
Yes.
Okay. Significant amount.
Correct.
And you put together a summary of what you thought were relevant messages, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about who some of these messages were sent to, who received some of these messages. Obviously, you spoke in great detail about messages from Chad Daybell. Is that right?
Correct.
And Lori Vallow.
Yes.
Melanie Gibb.
No, Melanie Boudreau.
Well, did you ever have any that you reviewed from Melanie Gibb?
There are messages between Lori Vallow and Melanie Gibb in the iCloud that I have reviewed. Yes.
Okay, so there were messages that were involved with Melanie Gibb as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did any of these folks use other names in speaking with themselves, referring to others?
Can you clarify? Do you mean that
So,
names other than
nicknames.
themselves?
Nicknames. Lori Vallow use any nicknames?
Yes.
What nicknames did Lori Vallow use?
For others or for herself?
For herself and when others responded to her.
She would be called Lolo. She would be called Lily. Chad Daybell referred to her as Elena. And then there were numerous nicknames for her contacts that she had within the iCloud.
Okay, and then as far as Melanie Gibb, do you recall the nickname that Melanie Gibb used?
For herself?
For herself, yes.
I'm sorry, I don't recall that.
Okay. If I mention the word Phoebe, does that ring a bell?
Phoebe rings a bell, but I couldn't say definitively that that's associated with Melanie Gibb.
Okay. And if I were to show you a text message that referenced Phoebe to Lori Vallow, would that refresh your recollection?
It may.
Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. Other nicknames, other people, Alex Cox, did he have any nicknames?
Al was the most common one.
Okay. Melanie Boudreau?
Mostly Mel.
Okay. Anybody else you can think of?
Lori Vallow referred to Chad Daybell frequently as Bubby, Bubby.
Okay. Anything else?
Not that I would classify as nicknames. There were several occasions where others were assigned names by Chad Daybell, but I wouldn't call those nicknames.
Okay. Now, if I could have Elmo put up Madam Clerk.
What are we going to put on the Elmo?
Judge, I'm going to ask the officer to go back to
Referencing 183.
183, Judge.
183 has been admitted, so, and Mr. Pryor's mentioned before, there's a light and zoom feature on that Elmo for clarity. And there's a light there as well somewhere. There's a light switch that gets rid of the shadow. There you go. Thank you.
Wouldn't make it without any help, Judge, I promise you. So I want to start towards the end of what we talked about. And you talked about your analysis of this particular discussion or chain of text messages. And this is from the Lolly time at iCloud, Lori Vallow, right?
Correct.
And the last line, I want you to read 824 again for me.
Of course. I want to be with you. That is my greatest hope and dream. I would happily join you tomorrow if it felt like heaven would not strike us down.
And you interpreted this in what way?
I don't believe I interpreted it at all during my testimony. I read it into the record on direct.
Okay. Well, I'm a bit curious. I want to be with you. That's Chad responding that he wants to be with Lori Vallow, right?
Correct.
It's my greatest hope and dream. He wants to have a relationship with her, right?
Yes, I mean, they've been in a 10-month relationship at this point, but I think he
Okay.
wants that relationship to be overtly known to everyone.
Okay. And you said a 10-month relationship. So 8/11 of 2019. I go back 10 months and that puts me right to October 31st, give or take a few days. So is it your testimony? You said 10 months. Is it your testimony that that relationship started immediately on October 31st, the first time they met?
Essentially, yes.
Okay. So they were in a physical relationship from the first time they met?
No, I testified that their physical relationship began the second time they met in person, which would have been November 15th through the 17th of 2018.
And your interpretation of what that physical relationship in 2 weeks later was what? What type of physical relationship they have 2 weeks later?
Chad Daybell wrote about it in great detail. They were kissing, fondling each other, in bed with each other, taking each other's clothes off.
Okay. And that, are you referring to the Jack and the Elena story? Is that what you're referring to?
James and
James and Elena. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I said Jack. James and Elena, excuse me. You're talking about the James and Elena story, right?
Jack and Elaine.
Correct.
And you know what Chad Daybell does for a living, right?
I do.
He's an author.
Yes.
He writes books about experiences that people have, whether religious or otherwise, right?
Yes.
And with every author, there's a little bit of exaggeration or artistic creativity whenever you're writing books. Would you agree with me?
If it's nonfiction, I would agree with you.
Okay. And you also know that this James and Elena was really a book in the making by Chad Daybell about his relationship with Lori Vallow, right?
I wasn't aware that it's a book in the making. No.
Okay. So this was just him taking doing a literary exercise, just writing about his relationship with Lori Vallow, not for the purpose of doing anything with it, just writing about this and making notes using different names, right?
I believe it's a truthful and accurate story.
Okay. Okay. A truthful and accurate story that you're putting down in writing about a relationship you're having with a woman, right?
Yes,
With some artistic creativity applied to it, correct?
I'll agree.
Hey,
Okay.
lollipop.
Now, did you did you, as part of your investigation, go back and look at some of Chad Daybell's writings?
We had someone in the investigative group do that. I've had some limited exposure to Chad Daybell's other writings, but I was not the individual who did an extensive analysis of those.
Okay. Are you aware that Chad Daybell made a habit of at least vaguely touching on some of his personal experiences when he wrote books?
It's my understanding that a couple of his books were about his prior experiences in his life.
And one of his books was about his daughter Emma. In fact, the very book mentions the name Emma in the book, doesn't it not?
I couldn't tell you the title of the book, but I believe that's correct.
So it wouldn't have been particularly unusual for him, given his past about writing about his past experiences, to put together a book or a novel about a relationship he was having with Lori Vallow, correct?
Correct. I think the James and Elena story is about his relationship with Lori Vallow.
And it wouldn't be unusual, like in his other books, to maybe provide some artistic creativity as far as the facts are concerned, right?
Right?
It would depend on which facts you're talking about.
So what you're saying to me is that if the facts are helpful to the prosecuting attorney, he's not making it up.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative. Move to strike.
Sustained.
You don't know which facts are creative in this story that he was writing Lori Vallow, do you?
I know that we were able to vet and verify an extensive number of facts from that story.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you whether the explicit sexual detail is accurate or not, but the other elements are accurate.
Okay. So when we go back to this lolly time that's up on the board here and showing us, the last line is, I would happily join you tomorrow if it felt like heaven would not strike us down. You see that line?
I do.
Okay. And you said you didn't offer any explanation as to what that meant.
On direct, I did not.
Okay. And that was on August 11th of 2019.
That's correct.
And it talks about heaven would strike us down in regards to the relationship.
Say again.
Well, it's in regards to the relationship because I will happily join you tomorrow if it felt like heaven would not strike us down. That's what that says, isn't it?
It does.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with murder, does it?
Yes.
I don't know that I could say entirely that it doesn't.
Okay. Does it have anything to do with the fact that maybe Mr. Daybell felt he couldn't divorce his wife, Tammy?
I don't know whether that's what that's in reference to or not.
Could it have anything to do with the possibility that Chad Daybell, as this so-called visionary who gets these premonitions, wouldn't leave his wife, Tammy, until his premonition came true that she would pass away?
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates the evidence or the prior testimony.
Overruled.
You can answer that, officer.
Again, I don't know what was in Chad Daybell's mind as it relates to why heaven would strike him down if he joined Lori Vallow at that point.
Okay. Tens of thousands of text messages, right?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't see in any of these, and if you have them in the other 10,000 that you went through, show me the one that says, hey, this is Chad. Let's kill the kids.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative, and tries to put evidence not in fact.
Overruled.
Facts not in evidence.
Well, it's question on cross. It's overruled.
Show me the text. It says, let's kill the kids.
Well, that is argumentative, Mr. Pryor. If you want to ask if there's a text, that would be different.
Is there a text that says, let's kill the kids?
There are several texts that talk in detail about the deaths of those two children. Yes.
Oh, well, in detail about the deaths and what happened during their deaths, right? Not let's kill the kids, are there?
Wait a minute. What do you mean what happened during their?
What I'm saying is that there's references to Tylee and JJ throughout text messages, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But there is not a text message that says, let's kill the kids, is there?
As if there would ever.
There are text message in those specific words, no, but certainly alluding to and planning for the deaths of Tylee and JJ, yes.
Okay, and what in reference to how they're planning to kill the kids, why don't you talk to me a little bit about that? What exactly did you come across that says, let's plan on killing the kids?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony and is argumentative.
That is sustained.
Okay. You just made reference to the fact that there are text messages that talk about the planning of killing these kids, right?
Correct.
What text messages are you referring to?
There are several text messages between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell that refer to a plan to take the children and Chad Daybell's ability as a supposed visionary to understand when that might happen.
Okay. Okay, so there's no specific text message that talks about we're going to kill the kids and live happily ever after, is there?
I would disagree. Contextually, I think that's the meaning of those texts.
Okay. So in other words, you're interpreting those texts how you think they should be understood, right?
Well, those texts talk about the deaths using the word death of Tylee and JJ. It talks about their death percentage, and both Tylee and JJ ended up being murdered. So if that's context, then that's the conclusion I draw, yes.
Okay, so what you're referring to are the text message where a numeric number was assigned to particular children about death percentages, correct?
Assigned by Chad Daybell, yes.
Right. Now, we talked a little earlier, and that's why I'm leading into this with you. And you could probably help me a little bit. My recollection is you were talking something about Ali Bloomer, right?
Yes, that's the second slide.
Okay. Well, it's actually the third slide, isn't it?
Oh.
Can you go to the third one? You threw me off, right?
It starts on the second slide, and then it continues to the third slide.
So you talked about the fact that because Chad Daybell put a numeric number on the children, that was the reason they were killed, right?
No, I wouldn't state it that way, that was the reason they were killed.
Okay. That supported your theory that they were killed because they were put a dark number on them, right?
I believe the dark number provided the justification for them to carry out those acts.
Okay. Okay, so when we go down to line 3000, would you read that one for me, the first two sentences?
Yes. Ali Bloomer is 4.1 dark. Her cop husband is 3 dark.
Okay. Now, to your knowledge, are Ali Bloomer and her husband dead?
To my knowledge, they are not.
Okay. So when you assign a number dark, explain this. I mean, you probably know better than I do. Is this something that's part of the LDS faith?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Is there a reference in the LDS faith to light and dark?
Light and dark. Yes, there's reference throughout the Bible and the LDS faith to light and dark.
So if there was previous testimony by someone who suggested that light and dark is not part of the LDS faith, they're either mistaken or they're not being truthful. Would that be fair?
I don't think light and dark as assigned by Chad Daybell is part of the LDS faith.
That's not what I asked you, sir, and I appreciate you answering that way. What I asked you is that there is light and dark in the LDS faith, right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Okay. It's overruled. There's a light and dark in the LDS faith, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're talking about is that there's a numeric system here. Is that what you're telling me? That Mr. Daybell's using?
There is a numeric system that Mr. Daybell is using.
Okay, and you've never seen this with anybody else ever putting in a numeric system on light and dark, correct?
I have not.
Okay. Okay. And Allie Bloomer and her cop husband are not dead, right? To your knowledge?
To my knowledge, they are not.
Okay. So do you know how this dark numbering system works? Is high good or is low good, or how does that work on the dark spectrum?
From what I've been able to decipher based on my participation in the investigation, the higher the number, the worse it is.
Okay. So if you're a 1 dark, that you're better off being a 1 dark than you are being a 4 dark, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right.
How many different words can there be for okay, all right, okay, right, okay, all right? I would assign an even lower negative number to that cretin, Chad.
Judge, could I have exhibits 6 and 7?
Yes, I'll have the bailiff bring those over.
I do appreciate how the courtroom lighting puts Chad in a shadow in the morning because the window is behind him and not anybody else.
And if you could just bear with me. While I'm waiting this to warm up a little bit, we'll move on and talk about a couple of other topics while I'm. It talked about manipulation, right? From both Chad and Lori.
Yes.
Now,
Mr. Pryor, just on the exhibit you've got continually being published there, if you're done with that, would you remove it from being published?
It's almost like when they set up that courtroom, they put that table right there.
now your testimony is that you felt that Chad was using his religious knowledge or beliefs to manipulate Lori Vallow, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So he was suggesting that because he has so much insight that he's with these religious insights that he's able to convince Lori Vallow to stay with him because he has religious insight. Is that correct?
He was looked to as the visionary for this small group, and in that capacity, yes, used that to keep Lori Vallow in a relationship with him.
And the small group you're talking about, who did you discover was in this small group?
The inner circle is really a trio of Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, and Alex Cox.
The terrible trio.
That's what I would refer to as the inner circle. There were others that were more peripheral.
Okay.
The terrorizing trio.
And when you say more peripheral, um, shared some of the same religious views that Chad Daybell has.
Yes, I would describe them as adherents to Chad Daybell's doctrines.
How many of those do you talk about that are peripheral people that were adhering to it?
Six to 10.
Would
That's scary because I think some of them still believe, and they're branches off of those people.
would Melanie Gibb be included in that group?
Yes.
David Warwick?
Yes.
Zuluma Pastenes?
Yes.
Zulema.
Melanie Boudreau?
Yes.
So this wasn't a large group of people then.
No, Chad Daybell spoke at a lot of conferences and those were larger, but I don't, I can't speak to how his message was received by those people.
And when you say Chad Daybell spoke at these conferences, you touched on it a little before that maybe Lori Vallow wasn't believing everything that Chad was saying about this religious stuff, right?
No, I don't believe I said that. I do believe she believed pretty much everything that Chad Daybell said.
Okay. And maybe what you testified to is that you questioned the accuracy of it in one of the text messages that you put up on the board. Do you recall saying something about that? No?
I don't, if you can direct me to this particular message.
So Chad Daybell started writing these books well before she ever met Lori Vallow. He met Lori Vallow, correct?
Yes.
And he wrote these books about his experiences and about his theories and interpretation of what he felt was the teachings of the LDS faith, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Introduces facts, not an evidence. I believe counsel's testifying.
Sustained.
Well, he wrote a lot of books about religious issues, correct?
Yes, I think most of his books had to do with kind of an end of times theme.
And he would go on these various, go to various places and speak about his books and try to sell books.
Correct.
This was sort of a way to market or to make a living by talking about various religious feelings about religion, and then he'd go on and speak to people, and then in the meantime try to make a living or try to make money selling these books to people, right?
Yes.
And the predominant audience that he would go to, these encampments, these gatherings, these various locales, for the most part, they were centered around Utah, correct?
No, I mostly, St. George, Mesa, there was one in Boise. So the Intermountain West.
And you beat me to the punch because I was about to start with Utah, then say Arizona, then say Idaho. But the predominant audience that these books were marketing to were people in Utah, Arizona, Idaho, correct?
That's where he spoke, yes.
And they were predominantly marketed to people of the LDS faith, right?
I think so.
And they were marketed to the people who would want to go to these various seminars about preparing for the end of time, right?
Yes.
And these people weren't all members of a cult, were they?
Not to my knowledge.
And there were various audiences who would show up and listen to Chad Daybell talk and sell his books, right?
Yes.
So the fact that he has Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, Melanie Gibb, and David Warwick who were friends of his, right?
Well, I think the relationship with Alex Cox and Lori Vallow was closer than what it was different than those other names that you mentioned and closer than friendship.
Right. But let's take, and we'll talk a little bit about the Alex Cox Lori Vallow relationship, but let's, as far as the other wars were concerned, all of the emails and text all of the text messages, that you talked about, they had a recurring theme. These people were friends, right?
Yes.
And these friends talked about religious beliefs, correct?
Yes.
And these religious beliefs may not be what everybody else believes in, but they seem to have a consistent theme, and they were all consistent in believing whatever Lori, Chad, David, and Melanie were talking about. Would that be fair?
I think that's fair.
Okay. So when you talk about a group, we're really talking about a group of friends who have some, maybe not traditional beliefs, but have religious beliefs, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the text I put up there from Lori to Chad, and it's the one line 836. Oh, wait. Let me know when you're ready.
Mhm.
You okay? You all set?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you take that as being would you take that as being in somewhat of a sarcastic tone?
No, I think Lori was pushing Chad and was serious.
Okay. So you should give all of your love and your attention to your wife and family. That's what she's saying, right?
Yes.
I'm just a distraction. Go have fun with your family. There's nothing sarcastic about that?
Well, if you look at Chad Daybell's reaction, which is that is so crushing and I feel so destroyed inside, I don't think he took it as being sarcastic.
Okay. I really do want you to. I just can't be in the way anymore. If things change, then we can talk, but we have nothing until things change. So she's basically drawing a line in the sand and saying, unless something changes, we have nothing to do with each other. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. So what she's doing is she's saying that unless something happens, either you divorce your wife or you kill your wife or your wife dies, you don't have me.
I agree.
Okay. And then Chad responds, I'm constantly begging for change below. You see that?
I do.
But I'm hindering your life and you deserve better. I love you so intensely. Okay. You see that?
I do.
The text following that, did any of them say, all right, I agree with you, Lori. Let's kill Tammy. You find any of those?
I found a number of texts talking about Tammy's death percentage in subsequent conversations.
Yeah. You're also aware that Chad Daybell, maybe you're not, but are you aware that since 2016, Chad Daybell had been talking to these public audiences about the fact that Tammy was going to have a very short life?
I was aware that he made those statements to particular individuals. I'm not aware that he spoke of that publicly, but yes, I know that he communicated that Tammy was going to die to a number of people.
Right. And these other individuals are friends and family of Chad Daybell, who are also friends and family of Tammy Daybell, correct?
That I don't No, I can tell you the ones that I do know that he spoke with
Okay,
and I'm not aware that they knew Tammy.
okay, okay. So it wasn't necessarily a secret that Chad was keeping with anybody since 2016, that he felt he had a premonition or a belief that his wife was going to have a short life, right?
There were certain people he communicated that to, correct?
And when I'm reading through the text messages and you went through your presentation, am I wrong when I'm reading these messages to read into this that Chad was waiting for Tammy to pass away, and that was what the delay was, correct?
It could be that, or it could be waiting to take action.
Okay. So we don't know what it was, right?
From the investigation, I believe I know what it was.
Okay. Well, people differ in their opinions, right?
They do.
Yeah.
So does prior mean to tell me that it's a legit matter of law to sit around and wait for somebody to die to talk about sitting around and waiting for somebody to die? Because it's a vision that you had?
And Judge, could we approach for just a minute?
Yes.
Judge,
Okay, that's okay, 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 right? Okay, right, okay, right, right, okay, okay, okay.
okay. So I'm just trying to understand what he's trying to get the judge or the jury to believe here. And that is because we were just sitting around waiting for her to die because Chad knew he was going to die. Exactly, Jen Lu. If I had that premonition about someone I loved, I would try and stop it. But in their warped mentality, well, God is just going to make that it's just destiny. They don't make destiny. They are just, he's just telling what the destiny is. But what they were actually doing was taking destiny into their own hands. So what we're supposed to believe is that he saw all these things happening, then all these things happened and he didn't have a hand in it, right? That he saw Charles Vallow dying and then it happened. That he saw Tammy Daybell dying and dying early in her life, and then that happens, even though we've been told she was a very healthy person. She was a very healthy 49-year-old lady. Okay. I know. I've always wondered that too, Destin Nation. How did Tammy react when she heard Chad, even if he wasn't saying at speaking events? I never heard about him saying that at speaking events, but at least saying that to his group. I'm sure that got back to her. I mean, it did get back to her that he was having an affair with Lori. So I'm sure some semblance of that got back to her, or maybe she was just plugging her ears and going blah 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 and just in complete denial about him. And if so, that's very, very, very sad. And I've always felt terrible for Tammy.
Best laid plans.
Best laid plans.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there's a thumb drive with a file in it. It may be a thumb drive that's having a few issues because it wanted to pull files and then it didn't. So we'll see if it will.
And it's here. Judge, I got it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Surprise. Magical words. You did it.
Yeah, I've always wondered why Tammy and Chad had such an incredibly separate life. Like,
And Judge, I'm going to try to publish off of Exhibit 7 an email from, I believe it was from the Lolly Time, previously admitted Exhibit number 7.
All right. Once you have that pulled up on your screen, let us know. And
Up,
then I'll,
Judge, I'm ready.
okay, I'll instruct the clerk this time to allow that to be published then.
Okay. Now, you previously mentioned about Phoebe, was your recollection was that it was Melanie Gibb. Is that correct?
I testified that I wasn't 100% certain of that, but I don't dispute that that's.
Okay. So at the top, this is a text message from Phoebe from the Lolly Time to Lori Vallow. Would you read the first line?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. I love you so much. I'm going to teach right now, teaching about discerning and shutting off dark portals.
Okay, and then the one below that.
I could see the darkness so clearing last night when I was teaching last night. Their eyes were dark like marbles.
Okay, now the date of those messages was when?
July 25th of 2019.
Were you aware during your investigation where Melanie Gibb was teaching on that particular occasion?
No, I'm not.
Okay. You are aware that Melanie Gibb taught classes, variety of different things about vibrations and about light and dark, correct?
I wasn't aware that she taught classes. I know there was a podcast and group discussions and things like that.
Right. She would go to encampments or she would go to programs and be a speaker talking about a variety of religious topics, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when Melanie Gibb talks about dark portals, is that something she's talking about that's consistent with the LDS faith to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
hey, catch me
Okay.
if you can.
When she's talking about eyes being like dark marbles, is that also something that's consistent with being of the LDS faith?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Okay. And to avoid, and Judge, we can bring that down now. I'm done. But during your research, there were other individuals that talked about putting numeric numbers on people with dark and light, right?
There was one single instance in all of my review where Lori Vallow disputed a designation made by Chad Daybell. So that's the only other time I'm aware of anyone else putting those numbers on
Okay.
individuals.
Okay, and all I want to do is just have you confirm then for me. In the review of all of those 10,000 plus text messages, are you telling me that other than Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, they were the only ones who talked about dark and light and put a numeric number on someone?
I am testifying that the only times I saw those numbers being generated, with the exception of one occasion, were all by Chad Daybell.
Okay, okay. And all of the people that were designated, well, so other than Chad Daybell, your testimony then is that nobody else put numeric numbers on people as it related to dark and light. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. You brought up a subject about the process of sealing. Remember that in the very beginning of your testimony?
It's part of the James and Elena story, correct?
Right. But you also explained that what sealing is in your definition, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I understood sealing to be part of a marriage process when two couples of the LDS faith go into a temple and they perform a private ceremony. Is that what you understand it to be as well?
Yes, when two people go to get married, correct.
Right. And that is a process in which, and I don't want to go into, we don't need to go into significant detail about this, but it's a religious symbolism to show that they have an intent of wanting to be together the rest of their life, right?
Correct.
And they're basically sealing themselves to each other in essence, right?
Correct.
Okay. Has nothing to do with death or anything like that. It has everything to do with the celebration of the marriage ceremony, correct?
It's a marriage ordinance that's performed in LDS temples.
Okay, all right.
The sealing ceremony.
Okay. And Judge, I'm going to stop there. That's all I have at this point, Judge. Thank you.
All right, that will conclude cross-examination of the witness. Redirect from the state.
Exactly, Jen Lou. I just think slowly, Pryor is just
Agent Hart, you were just asked about
pushing
the sealing reference in one of those messages. Do you recall testifying about that before?
I do.
And you were asked specifically about it dealing with the marriage ceremony by Mr. Pryor, correct?
Yes.
And previously, did you testify that there are also sealings done for people that have passed away?
That's correct.
And when you referenced the James and Elena story, was that your understanding of what was being referenced at that time?
Judge, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Was that your understanding of what was being referenced in the James and Elena story?
Yes, the sealings being referred to in the James and Elena story are what they call proxy, meaning that genealogical research is done and that a man and a woman go in and based on historical records, if two people had been married, they then perform that marriage ceremony in their behalf. The two people performing the ceremony aren't getting married. They're a stand-in for people based on genealogical research who are being sealed.
And at the time that was done, that was in the November of 2018?
November 16th of 2018.
And at that time, was Charles Vallow still alive?
No, he was not. Or excuse me, yes, he was. I'm sorry, I was thinking of 2019.
2019. So in November of 2018, Charles Vallow was still alive.
He was.
And in November of 2018, was Tammy Daybell still alive?
She was.
And is part of the idea behind the sealing that you would be married for eternity?
Judge, leading question.
Sustain.
When we looked at those messages, if you recall, was the indication that Chad believed or was indicating he and Lori would be married eternally?
That's precisely what was stated in Chad's writing.
Through your investigation, were you able to determine where the teachings of light and dark originated as far as this particular group of individuals you were asked about?
They originated from Chad Daybell.
And you indicated Melanie Gibb was one of the individuals that would have received those teachings?
I believe so, yes.
You were asked some questions about levels and light and dark, and specifically in reference to Allie Bloomer. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was Allie Bloomer a telestial relative of Chad or Lori?
Not to my knowledge.
And we talked a little bit about that telestial relative, the meaning of that, and Mr. Pryor put that slide back up. You'd referenced that it is the lowest kingdom. Would that also be, would telestial refer here on earth?
Yes.
So the reference was the telestial relatives were obstacles.
Correct.
Through your investigation, did you learn if Charles was ever deemed dark?
Charles Vallow?
Charles Vallow.
He was.
Did you ever learn whether Tylee Ryan was deemed dark?
She was.
Did you ever learn whether JJ Vallow was deemed dark?
He was deemed to have turned into a zombie, which
Judge, unresponsive.
Overruled.
is parallel to being dark, being inhibited by a dark entity.
And what about Tammy Daybell? Did you ever learn whether she was deemed dark?
Again, she was deemed to have been inhibited by a dark entity.
And based on your investigation and looking through these messages, who was the one that would determine if someone was light or dark?
Chad Daybell.
And of those 4 relatives that we talked about, are you aware of their current status?
All 4 are dead.
I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Blake.
Boom.
I don't think we got outside the scope of cross there or direct, so won't permit recross for this witness. That will conclude the testimony of Agent Hart. Is he going to be recalled potentially by either side?
He is going to be recalled by the state, Your Honor.
And he's going to be called by the defense as well, Judge.
All right. Agent Hart, going forward, then you're still under the court's exclusionary order, which disallows you from watching this trial or discussing your testimony or anybody else's testimony before you return to testify. I'll question you about that when you retake the stand in the future. So please abide by that exclusionary order. And with that, you may go ahead and step down, and thank you for your time. You're welcome. Yes, I'll have the bailiff retrieve that exhibit, please.
Jen, I personally doubt that the official.
And where we took our break already this morning, we'll intend to go forward till lunch. Does the state have another witness to call at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, the state would call Sydney Woodbury Shank.
Sydney Woodbury Shank. I highly doubt that the LDS Church officially condoned anything they did. I'll bet there are members of the church who have varying degrees of belief in the same stuff as Chad and thought that what they were doing was totally okay. Perhaps before they knew everything, the entire outcome of it. But my understanding is that they snuck in, that Jason Mao somehow used his temporal privileges. It was none of the temple sealing ceremony was legit. They abused their access to the temple to do that.
All right. The court will note the witness has been placed under oath at this time, so I am going to inquire. This case has been live streamed and available for view by the public in general or anyone interested. So, Ms. Woodbury Shank, have you watched this trial or observed any of the trial testimony since the trial began?
No.
Okay. Have you discussed with anyone else your testimony, anyone that has testified in this case?
No.
All right. Thank you for your responses then, Mr. Wood. If you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Could you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yeah, it's Sydney Shank, Schenk.
Ms. Shank, what state do you currently reside in?
I currently reside in Arizona.
Have you ever lived in Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes, in 2019, I lived in Rexburg, Idaho.
What were you doing there?
I was attending college at Brigham Young University, Idaho.
Were you working at the time?
I was not.
Were you looking for work?
Yes.
What kind of work were you looking for?
I, in the past, have nannied and babysat. I enjoy watching kids, so I went on a website called care.com. I'm looking for a job opportunity to be a nanny.
Oh, the babysitter.
Through care.com, did you ever meet a Lori Vallow?
Yes. So I posted a job listing that I wanted to nanny, and she replied to my listing, and we got in contact on the website, and then later messaged through text and set up a time for me to come meet her and her son JJ.
Where did you meet her?
I met them at her townhome in Rexburg.
And do you remember approximately when you met her?
Yeah, it was September 18th.
And through that conversation, did you learn if JJ had any special needs?
Yes. So she mentioned, yeah, he has autism and that he had difficulty focusing at times and had some behavioral difficulties at times. And yeah, that he needed extra help.
When you met with her, did she say anything about her husband?
She did. She mentioned as we got to know each other that they had just moved to Rexburg from Arizona and that her husband recently passed away from a heart attack and that JJ was kind of struggling to understand that.
Did she tell you anything else about JJ?
Not really that day, just yeah, that he had autism and some difficulties.
Did she speak with you at all about a daughter named Tylee?
She didn't mention her name, but she did say she had a daughter that was living in town, attending college, and that sometimes she would come to visit and do laundry or come home for dinner, and sometimes would babysit, but that she didn't like babysitting without being paid. And so she wanted someone else to come in and help her.
And so, from your understanding, was this daughter living in a separate location than Lori Vallow?
From what I understood, yes.
And this was on September 18th of 2019.
Yes.
Did she hire you to watch JJ?
Yes. So we had discussed coming in the future and coming the next day. She needed to go to the airport to pick up a friend and she needed some help watching him just for a few hours. So I came the next day on the 8th or the 19th to watch JJ.
Did she, and approximately how many hours did you watch him that day?
I want to say 3 to 4 hours.
Did Lori say anything to you about JJ's medications?
She did. She, when I arrived, explained like what to feed him and some activities to do. And then also that if she got home later, that I could give him some medication to help him sleep.
So tell us about watching JJ. What do you remember about that experience?
I remember him playing with the neighbor kids the majority of the time, and it was going fine. He was a fun kid, and he eventually went over to the next door neighbor's house to play. And I fed him some dinner before he left. And eventually his mom was going to come home soon. So I went back and picked him up from the friend's house. And he seemed really upset and just sad. They had a little tiff about sharing toys or something. And he was pretty upset. And I tried to calm him down best I could, but he had some behavioral difficulties calming down and was getting a bit aggressive and angry.
Okay. Did you have any other contact with Lori Vallow that night?
I did. So she came home from the airport with her friend, and her brother was there, and she tried to help me calm down JJ. And just in the midst of kind of him freaking out, I just left and she paid me. Yeah.
Did you have any further communications with Lori Vallow?
I did. So a couple days later, I messaged her again, hoping to work again. This, from my understanding, was going to be a longer term job that I could work for her few times a week as she needed it. And asked when I could come back. And she said that JJ went with his grandparents for a month and that she was in Hawaii for a month. And that after that month had passed, I could reach out to her again to reschedule another time to babysit.
And did you ever try to do that?
I did. Yeah, I called her and texted her and never got a response back. From that point on, I didn't speak with her at all.
So you never heard from her again?
No.
Did Lori Vallow ever mention the name Chad Daybell to you?
No.
So you, through your contact with her, you never heard of a Chad Daybell?
No, never.
Your Honor, that's all the questions the state has for now.
All right, Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
What could he possibly ask this girl?
It's still morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Do you have a recollection of about what time Lori Vallow returned home?
I don't know for sure, but it was around dinner times, probably around 5 or 6 at night.
Okay, you mentioned that it was about 3 or 4 hours that you watched JJ, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you, and this was Thursday, right?
Yes.
And then what time did you arrive to start the babysitting?
I don't know for sure, but must have been 4 hours before that. So around maybe 1 o'clock.
Okay.
I don't know for sure though.
And you mentioned that you fed JJ that day. You fed him dinner.
Yes, yeah.
Is it possible it was after dinner?
That what was after dinner?
When Lori Vallow returned?
Yes, yeah.
So you don't know about what time after dinner though?
No, not for sure.
Okay. Okay. Now, before you started babysitting JJ that day, Lori warned you about some behavioral problems, right?
Yes, yeah.
Warned you how to distract him, do things to distract him, show him a show,
Yeah.
or keep him preoccupied because JJ suffered from a form of autism, from what I understand, correct? Right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And when Lori left, did she leave with anybody?
Yes, she left with her brother.
Do you remember what his name was?
I believe it was Alex.
Okay. And do you know about what time they left?
I would guess around 1 o'clock. Shortly after I arrived, they left.
Okay. Okay. And they were going to pick up a friend on Thursday that day, correct?
Correct.
And do you know the name of that friend that they were going to pick up Thursday afternoon?
I did not.
Did you happen to see her when she arrived?
Yes.
Can you describe what color her hair was?
It was a long time ago.
Okay.
But from what I remember, I want to say blonde.
Okay.
But honestly, I don't remember for sure.
And a slender lady.
Yeah.
Did anybody mention the name Melanie by any chance?
I can't say for sure.
Ooh,
I
he
don't
sure is
remember.
on
At some point later, did you find out who that other friend was?
No.
Okay. And you noted I read the officer's report about the interview with you. You noted that she came in and she didn't have any luggage with her.
Yeah, that's correct.
That struck you as kind of odd.
Yes. I didn't know how long she was staying, so Or maybe she left it in the car. I don't know.
Okay, you don't know,
Yeah,
but she didn't come in with the luggage, right?
no,
Okay. Okay. And you noted that there were some behavioral problems with JJ right off the beginning, right?
correct. Yeah.
Something about going upstairs and he knocked a mirror on the bed or something?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
He was just kind of freaking out. And when we came home from the friend's house, he kind of threw like the ottoman and a chair down. And then he ran upstairs and wanted space. And I heard something fall and it was the mirror. So I went up to check on him to make sure that he was okay. And I saw that, yeah, it was broken.
So, from what I understand, you're telling me is that Lori Vallow warned you ahead of time that JJ had some behavioral problems.
Correct.
Maybe not to the extent you experienced, though, right?
Yeah.
And this was a handful of activity with JJ, right?
Correct.
Throwing a lot of things, correct?
Yes.
Misbehaving, tantrums,
Yes.
throwing things upstairs,
Asked and
throwing things
answered.
downstairs,
Yes.
climbing up and down all over the furniture.
Yes.
And this was on the 18th, Thursday, the 18th of September, and you were alone with JJ when all of this was going on, right?
It was the 19th.
I'm sorry, the
Yeah.
19th, Thursday, the 19th.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then at that point, after you had sort of straightened things up in Lori's house, you went over to pick him up with the friend, right?
No, he was upset and throwing stuff after the friend's house.
Okay. But before he started throwing the stuff, he was over at a friend's.
Correct.
And was there a little bit of drama over there as well?
Correct.
Talk about that with me a little bit. What kind of drama did we have while he was over at the friend's house?
From what I remember, they were just upset about a toy or sharing a toy.
Okay.
And JJ had a hard time doing that.
Okay. So when, and I'm bouncing around for a reason, so please bear with me. When the person who showed up from the airport on the 19th, the only people in the house at that point would have been the person they picked up at the airport, Alex Cox, Lori Vallow, and JJ, right?
Correct. Yes.
And at no point during that time did you ever see anybody else at the house. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. You never heard anybody mention the name Chad Daybell, did you?
No.
Okay. Now, were you aware that JJ and Tylee had a very close relationship?
No, I wasn't
Okay.
aware.
But interestingly, you noted to the officer that when when Lori and her friend and Alex got home, you told Lori about, JJ's behavior.
Correct.
And to some extent, it was still going on, correct?
That's correct.
And at that point, you made note of the fact that Lori seemed to be acting in a particular way towards JJ, right?
Correct.
And you said it appeared to be a little overwhelming. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I felt, and maybe I was judging, but I felt as if she was too comforting to him and didn't try to correct that behavior. Because to me, throwing chairs and breaking stuff isn't an appropriate behavior. And instead of correcting that, she was more just emotionally there for him and like being very sweet and kind to him, which I guess is a loving mother. But to me, that was a little strange that she wouldn't correct that inappropriate behavior.
Right. And you viewed her behavior as over nurturing?
Yeah.
She went over the top.
Correct.
She was cuddling him too much.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And all of this behavior that you saw, the active behavior by JJ at that time, did that continue on while you were there? Lori was there, Alex, and this other person?
He seemed to calm down a little more once she came.
Okay.
And it improved a little.
Okay. And lastly, while you were there, the person that they picked up at the airport, when all of this behavior was going on and you were trying to explain to Lori, did the person who they picked up at the airport, did she ever use the word zombie?
No,
Did Lori Vallow at that time ever use the word zombie to describe Alex's erratic behavior?
no,
Did Alex Cox ever use the word zombie to describe JJ's erratic behavior?
no,
Did anyone in that house at the time, when JJ was acting up, use the word zombie?
no,
Did you ever hear the words from JJ using the words zombie?
no.
I have nothing else.
All right.
Nothing on redirect.
He thought he
All right, that
some points
concludes
there.
the testimony of this witness then. Thank you for appearing today. Will this witness be recalled by either side?
Not by the state.
Ms. Pryor?
No, Judge. Oh,
Okay.
it's on, Judge. No.
All right, that concludes your testimony then. You may be released. Thank you for appearing today.
It's so misleading for Pryor to ask questions like, did they,
All right,
did you
state
ever,
have another witness lined up to call before we start lunch.
Yes, Your Honor, the state would call Dr. Josh Wilson.
Okay.
was there ever a text that said, let's kill the kids or let's kill Tammy or that the kids were zombies? I mean, come on. It's so misleading. Have you ever seen in a trial where there's a text message that says, let's kill these people? Come on.
solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you.
That's why they come up with these code names so they don't text these inflammatory, inculpatory things.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn and taken the stand, I am going to inquire about the court's exclusionary order. This case is being live streamed on the court's channel, and I want to inquire, have you observed any of this trial testimony before you took the stand today?
No, Judge.
Okay, have you discussed with anyone else their testimony that's been given in this trial?
No, Judge.
Okay, thank you for your responses. Ms. Beatty, if you'd like to inquire, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Wilson, can you please state your full name and spell your last name?
David Joshua Wilson, Wilson.
And you go by Josh?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you currently employed?
Madison School District in Rexburg, Idaho.
And what is your job title there?
I'm a building principal for Kennedy Elementary.
And Kennedy Elementary School is in Rexburg, Idaho.
Yes.
Were you employed as the principal of Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg in 2019?
Yes.
Do you recall a former student named Joshua Jackson or JJ Fallow?
Yes.
When, if you recall, did JJ enroll at Kennedy Elementary?
The beginning of September, I believe September 3rd was his first day of 2019.
Do you recall who, if anyone, accompanied JJ to enroll him in school?
Yes, his mother, Lori.
What, if anything, did his mother, Lori, tell you about JJ's enrollment?
That they were moving from Arizona. Her husband had just passed away from a heart attack, and that they were moving to Rexburg to be closer to family.
How long was JJ enrolled at Kennedy Elementary?
3 weeks. I believe his last day was September 21st.
And do you recall having any communication with Lori Vallow or anyone else about JJ's enrollment at Kennedy Elementary?
Yes. Mom had contacted the school. We were trying to get a hold of her to finish some assessments. JJ had special needs, and so we were in the process of of finishing up assessments to see how we could help him be successful at school. We were trying to get a hold of mom to finish that up, and mom had informed us that they were moving, or that JJ would be moving to Louisiana.
And just really quickly, how did she communicate that to you?
Over the phone.
Okay, so, and what else did she tell you, if anything?
During that conversation, I had indicated that once they get over to Louisiana, just have that school that they enroll into request records, and we would be happy to pass those along. She then indicated that they weren't going to enroll in public school, that they were going to homeschool, that they had a cousin with similar needs, and that they would be homeschooling. And then I informed her that we would house JJ's records there at Kennedy, and whenever they chose to enroll in public school again, whether it be back in Rexburg or somewhere else, that's where the records would be.
And at any time after that conversation, did you receive any requests for JJ Vallow's records?
No.
Okay. And Your Honor, if I may have just a moment.
Yes.
And Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. Beatty. Any cross-examination, Mr. Pryor?
Refer you as principal, or how can I refer to you?
Sure, principal.
Principal?
Yep.
Okay. So principal, from what I understand, the discussion with Miss Vallow was by way of a phone conversation. Is that right?
Correct.
Did at any time was a child enrolled in the school at Kennedy Elementary?
Yes.
And did that child attend the school?
Yes.
And for how long a time did that child attend the school?
About 3 weeks.
Okay. And during that initial phone conversation with Miss Vallow, did the name Chad Daybell ever come up?
No.
Did you ever see Chad Daybell at the school picking JJ up?
No.
Did you ever have any mention of any kind whatsoever in the 3 weeks that JJ Vallow was at your school of the name Chad Daybell?
No.
I have nothing else. Thank you, Judge.
All right, any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. That will conclude the testimony of this witness. Is the state intending to recall the witness?
No, Your Honor, he can be excused.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thanks for testifying. You're excused from any subpoena, and you can step down. Thank you. They have another witness lined up.
Yes, Your Honor, the state would call Wynn Hill.
Thank you.
Did they say Win Hill? Looks like law enforcement.
Affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hill, now that you've been placed under oath, let me just ask you a few questions before you testify. Because this case is being broadcast and available for public view, I want to ask if you have viewed or listened in on any of the testimony in the trial up to this point.
I have not.
Okay, have you discussed with anyone else their testimony they provided?
Nope.
All right, thank you. Ms. Beatty, you can inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your full name and then spell your last name?
Yeah. My name is Wynn Hill, Hill,
And sir, where are you employed?
at Brigham Young University, Idaho,
And where is that located?
Rexburg, Idaho.
How long have you been employed by Brigham Young University, Idaho.
Yeah, I've been there 18 years.
What is your current job title there?
I'm a therapist in the counseling center.
And prior to being a therapist in the counseling center, did you have a different job title?
I did. I was the dean of students there.
Were you the dean of students in 2019 and early 2020?
I was.
And in February, well, let me back up a little bit. As dean of students, did you have access to a student file management system?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a student management system. Yes.
Does that system allow you to look at it to determine who is currently enrolled?
Yes.
Does that system allow you to look at who may have been enrolled in the past?
Yes.
Does it allow you to look at who may have applied to the school and not necessarily enrolled?
Yeah. Anyone who starts an application. Yes.
Were you contacted by law enforcement in February of 2020 to do a records check on an individual named Tylee Ryan?
I was. Yes.
Did you check that individual in the student file management system?
I did. Yeah. They asked me to check the name Tylee Ryan, Tylee Vallows, and Tylee Cox, date of birth 9/24/02, and I did check that. Yes.
Were you able to determine if this individual was a current student?
Yes, they weren't. In fact, we had no record of any of those names.
Did you have any record that this individual had ever even applied to
No.
BYU, Idaho?
Nothing.
Okay. If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
And Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Beatty. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
No notebook, so it's going to be short. Did you ever have an occasion to talk to Lori Vallow on the phone?
No.
Did you ever discuss an application with anybody? Alex Cox, Lori Vallow?
Nope.
Did you ever discuss an application, or did anybody in your organization discuss an application with a Tylee Ryan?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and obviously you'd never heard the name Chad Daybell in relation to any application process for Tylee Ryan, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, nothing else, thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Either side intend to recall the witness?
No, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, that'll conclude your testimony then. Thank you for appearing. You're released from any subpoena, and you can go ahead and step down from the witness stand.
Ticking off those.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering when the babysitter was testifying about the way Lori was handling JJ. Look, I've never had a child with autism. I don't know the proper way to handle a child with autism. And I think depending on how much they're able to understand about the world about them, it's probably hard to correct their behavior without nurturing them, you know? So it may be that Lori was doing the exactly right thing by just calming him and nurturing him. But at the same time, we have to remember she had also taken away his medication. His father is dead. His sister's not around. And his dog's been taken away and he's been moved. So he's having to meet new friends, which is hard for anyone. And when you're on the spectrum, harder, more difficult. They just made life miserable for all the people around them up until they killed those people. And when you put it in their warped framework of their brains, Well, they're dark. They're going to be dead soon anyway. So we're just going to manage them, handle them until.
All right, I discussed in a sidebar with council scheduling for the day. The morning's gone more quickly than the state anticipated in terms of lining up their witnesses. We're going to take the lunch recess at this time. We will take a longer break today in order to allow for appearance of afternoon witnesses. So the lunch recess will begin and we will come back on for additional testimony at 1 o'clock. Does that work with the state
Yes, Your Honor.
defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone. We'll be in recess until then.
All right, please.
Oh my gosh, I've been muted. I've been muted. I don't know how much of all that I just said that you heard. But anyway, I've been trying to keep up with what's going on in the Karen Reed trial as well. And they seem close. Yeah, I was muted. Thank you, Harlot. Sorry. So I've been trying to keep up with what's going on in the Karen Reed trial. And apparently, they're almost they almost have a jury. They just need 4 more alternates. They have the 12. They need 4 alternates. And now the defense and the state are fighting over the layout of the courtroom. So apparently the Commonwealth, so the Karen Reed's team has filed a motion trying to rearrange the courtroom so that you can, I guess certain people can't see, or the jurors can't see the witnesses according to the motion, according to the defense. And the response from the state is, hey, we've been holding trials here for hundreds of years. This courtroom was built a long time ago, and so of course the defense is asking for like special treatment, it seems like, because this is a high profile case. The courtroom that they've asked for it to be moved to is much smaller than the one that the state has, or that is currently slated to hold the trial. There's no answer about this motion yet, but otherwise there's really not much of an update from Karen Reed. I'm not super interested in jury selection and the inner workings of that. I'm more interested in when the trial actually starts. So when the trial starts, we'll have more active updates from the Karen Reed trial. But also, if you are a member, you have probably seen that I posted a on the community tab for members about a mental health panel I want to hold on my other channel. But even if you are not a member, you're invited to participate in this. I just wanted to give members the first dibs at putting up their hands. And the idea is to have we were having a chat last week in the chat about mental health and treatments and stuff like that. And, we were starting to talk about, hey, we should have a panel to just talk about this. And because in a helpful way, not in a depressing way, not to sit here and tell all of our sob stories about what we went through. I do have membership. I have memberships here and on the other channel. Yes. So, so what I want to do, I put in a note in the membership tab for y'all to read and see what format I want to do. And it's basically for people to say what has worked for them and what they wish they knew that what they wish they knew then that they didn't know now. And I want it to be kind of structured and helpful, but also for the voices of the viewers and the subscribers and the members to be brought out, not just mine and other creators. So it's on both channels, on Checkmate, and so the panel itself will be on Checkmate. The I put community tab announcements in the membership for members on both channels. And Stacy, it looks like you're a member here, so you should be able to see that. So anyway, so that's it. I'm going to no worries, Stacy. I'm going to close this up. I'll reschedule for an hour from now. I think he said they're coming back at 1:30 their time. So, but I'll double check before I reschedule, and I will see you back here for the afternoon session of the Chad Daybell trial. So thank you for being here. I'm going to, because I haven't done it for the entire stream, I always forget to do it. I'm going to share my links if you care to support the channel. Very appreciated. Of course, never expected. And in case you do want to join as a member, here is the membership link. So there you go. Oh, you think it's okay? I'll double check. Thank you, Truth Junkie. I'll double check before I schedule it. All right. I will see you all soon. Bye. Thanks for being here.